It's the 24th of March, 2015. An Airbus A320 is cruising over the Pyrenees on a short flight down to Barcelona. It's the first of 2 flights for this crew today, and so far it's been an ordinary morning. Good weather, smooth boarding, nothing unusual in the paperwork. Near the top of descent, the captain gets up to use the toilet. He hands control to his first officer, checks the camera by the door, and steps out. The reinforced cockpit door locks behind him. For the next 4.5 minutes, the first officer is alone. And during those minutes, the autopilot's altitude dial is wound down to 100 feet, then back up, then down again. The aircraft never moves. He's only setting the numbers, testing. He doesn't go through with it. The captain comes back, the flight lands in Barcelona, and no one knows what just happened. But it was a rehearsal. A few hours later, on the flight home, the first officer will be alone behind that door again, and this time, he won't stop. This is the story of Germanwings Flight 9525. The young man in the right-hand seat was, by every measure the industry uses, exactly where he was supposed to be. Flying had been his whole life. As a boy, he covered his bedroom walls with posters of jets. He flew gliders, and he was good at it, really good. Pilots have a word for that pull. We say you've been bitten by the bug. I know the feeling well. He applied to one of the toughest flight schools in the world, where only about 1 in 20 applicants get in. He passed the interviews, the aptitude tests, the psychological screening, and he made it. Nobody in all of that found a single reason he shouldn't fly. A few months into training, far from home and pushing himself too hard, he started to struggle. He developed physical symptoms that had no physical cause. A psychiatrist diagnosed a severe depressive episode with suicidal thoughts. He left the course and went home to his parents to be treated. And he got better. With therapy and time, his psychiatrist saw real progress. And after about a year, he was cleared to come back. Depression is treatable, like most illnesses are. He had just proved it. When he got his medical certificate back, though, it carried a note. A restriction written into the paperwork said that if his depression ever returned, his license would be revoked for good. Think about what that note does to a person. You've spent your whole life chasing one thing, spent your family's savings to get there, and now you've been told that the day you admit you're unwell again is the day it all ends. So if the symptoms came back, would you tell anyone? He didn't. For a few years it held together. He finished his training, joined Germanwings, a low-cost airline owned by Lufthansa, and flew short routes around Europe. His medical was renewed year after year. The captains who flew with him saw nothing wrong. He ran half marathons, he had a girlfriend, and they were planning a family. Then, late in 2014, it came back. It started with his eyes. He became convinced he was going blind. Seeing stars, halos, flashes of light. He saw one doctor after another, sometimes several times a week. Every test came back clean. There was nothing physically wrong with his eyes. For a pilot, your eyes and your heart are the 2 things you're most afraid of losing, because you know how little it takes to lose your medical. His eyesight wasn't failing. His fear was coming back, in a form he could point to. When one doctor suggested the cause might be in his mind, he stopped going. His family doctor was blunter. He warned of an emerging psychosis and told him to check into a clinic. He ignored it. By now, admitting he was ill didn't mean getting help. It meant losing everything. He'd even tried to buy insurance to protect his income if he lost his license, and he'd been refused because of his history of depression. About 1 in 20 people will go through depression at some point in their lives. Pilots are no exception. But aviation has spent decades treating mental illness as a reason to take someone off the job, sometimes permanently. So instead of asking for help, pilots learn to hide it. A hidden illness is far more dangerous than one out in the open. By March of 2015, his thinking had gone somewhere darker than depression alone. Most people who are suicidal go out of their way to protect others. They want to take away pain, not cause it. This was something else, something his doctors couldn't see. And it turned his attention to one part of his job he could use. In the days before the flight, he started reading about the locking mechanism on the Airbus A320 cockpit door. To understand what he did with it, you need to understand that door. After the attacks of September 11th, the industry decided the cockpit had to become a fortress. On the A320, the door was rebuilt, bulletproof, reinforced, locked from the inside. The idea was simple: keep dangerous people out. To get in, a crew member types a code into a keypad and a buzzer sounds in the cockpit. The pilots check a camera, and if everything's fine, they hold a switch to unlock the door. But that switch has a second position. If the pilots believe there's a threat outside, they can hold it to lock. That overrides the keypad and seals the door for 5 minutes. There's even an emergency code for when the pilots inside are unconscious. Type it in, and after a delay, the door opens on its own. But all of it was built on one assumption: that the danger comes from outside, not from one of the two people the door exists to protect. Some airlines spotted that gap and made a rule: if one pilot leaves the cockpit, a member of cabin crew takes their seat, so nobody is ever in there alone. Germanwings hadn't adopted that rule. That brings us to the flight home, Germanwings 9525 to Dusseldorf. On board are 144 passengers, an opera singer, a class of teenagers coming back from an exchange trip, mothers, fathers, toddlers. With the crew, 150 people. At 10 in the morning, the jet takes off and climbs out over the Mediterranean. The weather is clear. On the recorder, the cockpit sounds completely normal. 2 pilots working through their checks. Once they level off in the cruise, the captain says he's going to step out. He hands over control and goes. About 20 seconds after the captain leaves, the altitude dial is wound down again, this time all the way to 100 feet. The autopilot does as it's told. The engines come back to idle, the nose drops, and the aircraft starts down. On the ground, the controller sees the altitude dropping and asks them what level they were cleared to. Nothing comes back. He tries again, and again. He switches frequencies, tries the emergency frequency, has another aircraft call them. Every time, silence. And on the recorder, the sound of the first officer breathing, calm and steady. The captain knows something's wrong. He comes back from the toilet to a door that won't open and types in the code. Inside, the first officer moves the switch to lock. The buzzer goes quiet, the keypad dies, and a red light appears above the door. The captain starts to understand what's happening. He knocks. Then he pounds. Then he finds something to use as a tool and tries to force the door open. The same door designed to stop a determined attacker. It holds. Behind it, the descent continues, steady and deliberate, toward the mountains. "For the love of God, open this door!" That's what the captain is heard shouting. In the last minutes, the people on board knew something was badly wrong. At 9:41 in the morning, the ground proximity warning starts calling out to pull up.
Terrain, pull up, pull up.
Seconds later, Germanwings 9525 hit a mountainside in the French Alps. There were no survivors. 150 people were gone. The crash site was so remote that crews had to be flown in by helicopter. The aircraft was destroyed, a huge debris field made up of small pieces. But both recorders were found within days, and once investigators heard the cockpit voice recorder, they understood what had happened almost immediately. This wasn't a mechanical failure. It wasn't the weather. It was a man who was seriously ill, hidden behind a door built to keep everyone safe. When the investigators published their findings, they were clear about one thing. The recommendations only work if they're taken together, not picked apart. Closer follow-up for pilots with a history of mental illness, airlines helping carry the cost when someone loses their medical, so honesty doesn't mean ruin. And most of all, real, confidential peer support. Somewhere a pilot who's struggling can go without their career ending the moment they walk in. Making the checks harsher won't fix this. It'll just push more people into hiding. There are pilots flying right now who are quietly unwell and don't believe the system will treat them kindly if they speak up. That's what has to change. A genuine way to raise your hand, get better, and come back to work. And depression doesn't make someone a killer. What happened here was the rarest, darkest possible outcome, almost unimaginably unlikely. Nearly everyone living with this illness would never hurt anyone. They deserve compassion, not fear. To the 150 people of Flight 9525 and everyone they left behind, we remember you. I'm your narrator, and this has been Sky Stories.